Hey, this is Ken from Coffee Crafters, and we thought today we would do a first roast demonstration on the new Valenta 8. And so we're just going to roast a couple pounds today. And I have setting recommendations for this. We have it in the manual. And I like to just kind of set it on manual. We're not going to roast with the Prometheus on this first one. And we're just going to set it and forget it. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn on the exhaust blower. We want to always turn on the exhaust blower first before we dump the beans. So that way when we dump the beans in, all the dust and stuff will go into the exhaust system. So on this load, I'm just going to set the heat on 5.5, and then I started the load on 3.5. I'm going to turn it down to 3 and turn it on, and we're going to do the entire roast with a heat setting of 5.5 and a loft setting of 3. One of the things you want to do to make sure on your roaster is go ahead and put a couple pounds in, or whatever your load size is going to be for your first load, and establish the loft to, I usually like to loft it like 3 to 5 inches down here, but make sure that the loft setting that you have is going to work, because if your power is different or your solid state relay potentiometer combination are slightly different, it might be a little bit different setting than 3. But yeah, so we're going. So one of the nice things about the Valenta roasters is you can leave the loft setting in one spot if you want, and through the entire roast. So on the old artisan roasters with the conical hoppers, the loft would get higher and higher. You'd have to turn it down throughout the roast. You don't have to do it on this. And once we get roasting here, we start getting the chaff coming off the beans. I'm going to have Bryce come up and do a close-up, and you'll see that little vortex in there. You'll see that chaff kind of hanging around in the roast chamber until it dries out a lot more, and then it'll eject before it combusts or anything like that. So while that's roasting along here, I want to talk about some of the new features of the new Valenta series. So the Valenta 8, which is our smaller of the upright versions, is exactly the same construction as the new Valenta 12 that we're going to be testing here next week, and the Valenta 18. And one of the things that we did, anticipating that some of our build costs were going to go up, we went back to the drawing board and thought, what could we do to make the manufacturing cost less expensive for us, and so we didn't have to pass on some inflated costs for parts and whatever to the consumer. And the way we did that is we built the upright model with side panels. All the roasters have exactly the same setup in our manufacturing equipment. So when we're building side panels for the Valenta 8, we build the side panels for the Valenta 12 and the Valenta 18 at the same time. One setup, cut out all the metal, run them all through, and it saves us about 25% of the manufacturing hours going into this doing that. We also have some parts that we share. But basically, we've taken everything that we've learned about building the roasters, and we've made access to changing out the components easier. It takes much less time to put it together. With all of the subcomponents put together for this, which would be the side panel, the heat chambers, roast chambers, we can do final assembly and testing on this in about an hour. I can see the chaff starting to come out. And so you look down inside the roast chamber, you'll see the chaff kind of hanging around in there in the bottom. And as it gets lighter, as it comes off the beans, it gets lighter, it ejects and go up. So on this roast that we're doing, it was pretty much of a cold start. It'll take about 8 minutes total roast time. Yeah, so really easy to roast on. If we were roasting with the Prometheus, then we would switch it to auto over here. We'd have our computer hooked up. I don't have the Prometheus unit in here, but Bryce, if you want to come over here. So that Prometheus module screws right in here, plug in for it. We're roasting in. With the Prometheus, we just flip this switch from manual to auto, and and let the computer manage the heat. One of the things on this roaster, if you want to roast full loads, you can just flip it to manual, turn the heat all the way up, and it parks that roast right kind of in the middle of the sweet spot. The way we size all the roasters, our factory here is climate controlled to 65 degrees, and we're at about 238 volts under load. And so all of the roasters, when we size them, when we went from a 7-pound to an 8-pound, we modified the roast chamber with what we learned from the Valenta 3. And we make sure that on a warm machine, we can do 6 loads an hour, which means it has to do it under 10 minutes. It takes about 20 seconds to dump the load and get your next load started. So yeah, it's cranking away. So we went from 42 pounds an hour on this roaster to 48 pounds an hour. And we worked really hard to keep the costs on this roaster down. It's $8,800. We did make a price adjustment because we had the Valenta 7 way underpriced. You may have heard that in another video. We were selling it way below wholesale like we do the Valenta 3. So we made a little bit of a correction there, but still $8,800 for the entire system. One of the things with this roaster, we are no longer using or recommending soft flex duct for it. And one of the things that we did is we're using a Raycon blower with this. This blower is only, I think it's 550 CFM, Bryce, or it's 550. And it's really quiet. So we were really happy with this Raycon. We were able to, yeah, you're looking at the ducting back here. One of the things, our ducting is really ugly. And one of the reasons is we have a box of ducting over here that we've used over and over and over and over again. So when we're hooking something up, we just grab stuff out of the box and put it in. Not as pretty as some of our customers do. But by using rigid ducting only, or you can use a short amount of semi-rigid ducting, it really increases the airflow. Because one of the things, we get complaints all the time, people saying that their roaster is not venting, and we'll have them send us a picture, and we'll see a bunch of long stretches of flex ducting that is coiled up, it's not completely stretched out. And you can lose up to 50% of your suction by not having the flex duct completely put out. So this worked really good. We just used rigid ducting on this one. And we're cooling beans in 2 minutes on the full loads, 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Yeah, so it worked good. So we're already in the first crack over here. So one of the things when you're roasting that you want to look for, you want to never let the bean stop moving. And the reason I put 2 pounds in here today is if we look down in the bottom down here, we always want to make sure that the bean bed flow is going down, because it goes down, it gets pushed up near, rotates around. You never want to let the bean stop moving. And when we go to dump this load, one of the things that we have to do on the Valenta series, the upside is we made the CFM much lower to loft a full load. But in doing that, it can get really hot down there. So it doesn't take very long to scorch the beans if you let it stop moving. Also, when we dump the load, we're going to want to turn the loft air all the way down just for a little bit to evacuate the roast chamber at the very end. And then we can turn the loft back up and then put your next load back in. So we're already at 430 degrees. This was a really fast load. We could have slowed it down a little bit. We kind of went towards the minimum time to do a video, so the video lasts a little bit shorter period of time. But yeah, we're roasting about 580. It's 580, 600 degrees on a 2 pound load. We can see the larger loads go up a little bit higher. And then on the smaller loads, you can roast down to like 500, 520 on a 1 pound load. I have been roasting 200 gram samples in it today, just to try it out. And we fudged the location of that thermocouple down as far as we could before we started getting reflection reading from the hot air going up. And so The thermocouple probe in here is completely immersed when the bean temperature reads about 275 to 300 degrees, and then the reading is good. It still reads fairly accurate getting up there, but then it really settles in after that. All right, so we're already at temperature. First thing we want to do is open the blast gate. We'll go ahead and dump it. And there we go. There's a couple pounds of beans. We're ready to do our next load. So you see it doesn't take very long. If you have your other load of beans staged and ready to go, you just lift the hood up, go ahead and get this one started while the other one's cooling, and you can do back-to-back roast like that. So that's a little short video on doing your first roast. If you have any questions before you get started and want to give us a call, we can help walk you through that, but fairly straightforward. All right, we'll see you in the next video.